Hi, this is Steph from everythingvintagesteph.com. That's the name of my eBay store, and I also have a blog at everythingvintagesteph.com, and that is spelled with Steph with the 2 F's. And this is my third vintage video where you get to see some of my vintage items. What do you think I'm wearing? A vintage coat. It's got a fox collar, and a lot of the vintage coats had the shorter sleeves like this, but it's kind of warm today, so I'm going to take it off. But it's an awesome coat. Nice collar. I'll just put you over there. And I always like to show a little part of my eBay adventures in my basement. This is not the room I'm normally in, because this is the bigger part of the basement where all my clothing is. And you're only going to see like 1/3 of it, or even 1/4 or less. But here's the skirts that I have. These aren't vintage, but this is how I organize my stuff. The skirts are all in alphabetical order as we go down there, so I can find them very quickly if you buy something. All these things are in my eBay store. Over here I have some of my sweaters, such as this great Halloween sweater vest. Isn't that awesome? And I don't need to put those in alphabetical order because they're all there and pretty easy to find. Behind me though, I keep these these are all tops and blouses that are solid colors, plaid colors, striped colors, so that they're easy to find. But let's get to the vintage stuff. I have some vintage clothing over here, such as this awesome piece of purple dress with a vest on it. Now, vintage items on eBay are usually classified by decade. I would say this is the 70s, possibly the 60s, but you'll find things the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. I don't really consider anything vintage in the 90s, but it is 20 years ago, so it'll be vintage eventually soon. One of the ways that you can tell vintage is by the tag. So I'm going to show this one. Thank you, Amanda, camera person, awesome. You can see that it looks a little different from your normal tag. And all you really have to do is, go on Google and Google vintage tags, clothing tags, and you can study what they look like if you're not familiar with them. This top is also probably from the 70s. It's that neat polyester that I used to wear in the 70s. Yes, I did. But that's a pretty awesome fabric. And I'll show the tag again. This one's pretty worn, but that looks different than your normal tags today. One way that you can tell that something is vintage. 1980s, possibly 90s. Notice the shoulder pads. That's why I would call this vintage. And it's got this great design on there. And what a cool color. Pink, hot pink. Now this is really different. This is a jacket that somebody put the patches on it. And these patches are all from figure skating clubs. I'm surprised I still have this in my inventory because this is really cool. On the back, some of them are dated, like in 1968, so that's an easy one to date from the 60s. Somebody made that probably was a figure skater or a fan of it anyway. Most of the things I have are from the 70s and 80s. I don't find that many things from the 50s, but if you were a housewife in the 50s, you might be wearing something like this. House dress. This is what you could wear around the house. You didn't wear your pants in the 50s. You could wear a house dress. And a lot of you guys probably seen the show Mad Men, and their costumes are awesome on that show, but that's, 60s style. That's one way that you can tell. I wore this one time a couple years ago to a 70s party. I don't know if you can see how long it is, but it goes all the way down to the floor. And it's that thinner kind of polyester stuff. Looks like a clown outfit to me, but it was a hit. Here's a wrap skirt, probably from the 70s. It's got the applique on it, and this kind of quilty fabric, patchwork kind of fabric was popular in the 70s. Hey, it's popular again, so that's good. Then this is probably the oldest thing I have. It's old, it's kind of ugly. I think it's handmade. It's like nylon-ish, pleat-ish, got pleats on it and stuff. But I would say that's either like maybe the 30s or the 40s. When I find old stuff and I list it on eBay, it sells pretty much very quickly, so I don't have much in stock. But here's another cool skirt that might be from the 50s. Still, I'm not sure about that. This does not have a tag either. It's probably handmade. But that would make a great costume for Halloween too. And that's a tip. If you're looking in the thrift stores, look in the Halloween sections right now because they might have some really good vintage stuff in there. I get most of my items from thrift stores, but I also shop at estate sales, estate auctions, and people might be like cleaning out their entire closet of their grandmother, and you can find some good vintage clothing that way. I would wear this if I was going to a 70s party, maybe. Dress with a coat over top, little jacket blazer thing, and the polka dots. Yeah, polka dots are fun. And then the only other thing I'd like to show you in vintage, and I only have one piece of children's item right now because everything else sold, that this would be a little boy's like romper kind of thing. It's got shorts, little shorts on there, and so children's vintage clothing is something you might want to look for. But very popular is vintage lingerie, if you can find it, and you can find it in good condition. This I would say is from maybe the 1930s or 40s because of the lace, if we can get some of the detail of the lace on there. And this is very silky. It's probably not silk, but nylon and very soft. That's just a top of a nightgown. Might have had pants with it, I don't know. This one isn't very fancy, but if you can find a fancy lingerie, that's really cool. This one has some nice little pleats on it and ruffles. And again, the way to tell is to look at the tag. This tag is a little bit hard to see, but you can see that it looks different. And if you find anything with a union tag, that's definitely vintage. And you can even almost take it down to the year if you know how to research the union tags. So if you like my vintage videos and all my vintage nuttiness, then subscribe if you haven't already. Like me, of course. I want everybody to like me. And thank you for watching.